splash out up to £63 million on cab journeys. 24/7 they're running this operation for stars and staff, despite claims they need to save £100 million on shows like Traitors. Are they cutting back on the Traitors budget? Wow. I thought that was the big flagship. Where do they go with this? I remember I've been ferried in BBC cabs from time to time, even a plane as well, to Belfast to do a programme there. And it was, I'll explain more what specifically happened. This was about the BBC's promise to making sure they don't just make programmes in London. You've got to make them all over the country, and that's fair enough. But if you're going to ask a bunch of people who happen to live and proportionately will live in London, and then you're going to ferry them even on an aeroplane to Northern Ireland, then don't be surprised when you read headlines like 63 million quid is spent on transportation. William Yarwood is Media Campaign Manager with the Taxpayers Alliance. Always good to have your take on these things, William. I mean, a former boss of mine always said, when you take over a company, particularly in the world of media, the first thing you need to do is look at the taxi bill, because it's the most telling thing in the ledger book. And the BBC, it seems, nobody looks at their ledger book because, well, 63 million quid spent on cars.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so sort of immunised against these stories now that it's getting quite annoying, to be honest with you, Ian. I want to sort of laugh and sort of even scream a little bit about this story. But with this story, I had to sort of shrug my shoulders and go, oh, come on, guys, seriously? Taxis, for crying out loud, and not just for big stars, by the way, Ian, and not just for people who've come into the BBC really, really late in the evening. This is for employees who work there, who get paid a salary, via the licence fee, which is funded by, as you guessed it, taxpayers. And of course, the licence fee is due to go up to over 180 quid. Sometime soon. So yeah, taxpayers are getting more bang for buck in that way. But yeah, quite honestly, 63 million on taxis. If they're looking at ways to make savings, they should look themselves in the mirror and think, yeah, maybe our employees can find their own way home, and actually we shouldn't be spending this level of money on taxis.
I mean, look, we understand sometimes you might have to ferry somebody in a car to get them to a studio. It's late at night and there's no public transport or whatever. But to the tune of 63 million quid, I think that's a fairly eye-watering number that speaks for itself. Anyone with, objectively would look at that and say, if I was running that place, I reckon I could at least halve that bill.
Yeah, right. I mean, what are these taxis made out of? Gold? I mean, come on. I know taxis are not exactly the cheapest method of transport, but 63 million pounds. I mean, this is on a contract, right? So they're not paying on an individual case-by-case basis.
Yeah.
So whoever the taxi company is, hats off to them. They're very, very shrewd negotiators and have squeezed more money out of the BBC. But yeah, quite frankly, it's obscene. 63 million pounds should not be spent on a contract for taxis. Like I said, I understand that if, guests come in late and there's no public transport, I understand that they might need to get a taxi home. And I understand that sometimes that might be quite a long trip. Indeed. But for employees, yeah, give me a break. Yeah,
absolutely spot on. William, thank you as ever for your time. William Yarwood from the Taxpayers Alliance on that story. A couple of things that were of interesting. I did this show twice. I can't even remember what it was called. Was it something like Sunday Morning Live? Susanna Reid presented it, and they would have a panel of 3 people, and you would kind of debate the news of the day for an hour or the big topics of the week. There was always a sort of a ethical component. I think it was meant to sort of slightly kind of tick the box of the BBC's religious and kind of sort of social agenda. They had to do a certain amount of programming. That came under that category rather than news and current affairs. So you got Susanna Reid over there. I'd forgotten about her, frankly. So she'd have been flown out there and put up in a hotel. There was me and 2 other guests. I remember one of them was Benjamin Zephaniah, who's the poet, no longer with us. He was on once. But I did this thing twice. So 3 guests. We all get picked up at home and taken to the airport. So there's cab number 1. Picked up, taken to the airport. I think it was City Airport. And then we fly off to Belfast in an aeroplane. Not all on the same plane, by the way. And then you get to the other end and another taxi picks you up at the other end. And then that takes you to the hotel. So you've already done 2 cab journeys and a flight and a hotel. And then in the morning, if the hotel is not nearby, the cab will take you from the hotel to the TV studio. That's cab number 3. And then at the end of it all, they'll come and pick you up and take you back to the airport. That's cab number 4. And then you'll get back on an aeroplane. And when you arrive back at City Airport, another cab will pick you up and take you home again. That's cab number 5. 3 people, well, add Susanna Reid into it, that's 4 people, would have experienced all of that. One programme, watched by probably, my mum watched it, but as far as I can ascertain, that's the only person I know that did. So that's one when you look at that, and that all happened because the BBC's promise of making sure that they make programmes not just in London town, because it's a crime scene, so we better do this programme in Belfast. Well, there's loads of programmes you could make at BBC Belfast. I don't know whether that one was the right one. If they're ferrying 3 guests every week for 27 weeks a year, on that basis, you can begin to see how you build up to a sizable chunk. And the other thing, years ago, I used to do the BBC News paper review, usually along with one other. That also involved being taken in a cab from home to the studios and then back again at about 12:30, 1 in the morning. Fair enough, there's no traffic around. But it coincided on the night they used to record Strictly, when they did it at the, in the White City before they moved it. Now, of course, when you watch Strictly, if you noticed, you've got not just the celebs and the dancers that appear in it, but in the audience, you've got friends and family there as well. There's probably about 50 of them, and they've all been invited. So you'd sit in the reception and they would call out everyone's name. You didn't know whether they were going to call your name or Davina McCall or Anton or whatever, and all these other names you never... It was like a cattle market at midnight, 12:30 in the reception. Every single one of those people was getting into a BBC paid cab. Sometimes understandable. On quite a lot of occasions, I'm not quite sure what the hell they were doing. I mean, if your kid's on Strictly, isn't that for you to make your own arrangements? I'd have thought so.